This tutorial is brought to you by InformationAnalyticsInstitute.com. Hello and welcome to another Information Analytics Institute video tutorial. My name is Dmitry. Today we will take a look at an example from Chapter 8 of our course. And in this video I will show you how to configure column chart and how to make the standalone checkboxes to control the visibility of its columns. Remember, you can download step-by-step instructions and files for this dashboard at our website. The link is in the description below. Okay, here I have a prepared dashboard. It has a blank canvas, but it has a few sample tables prepared here in the spreadsheet area in order to save time in this video. Okay, so let's start reviewing the settings of a column chart. It's right here under the charts twig, and we're gonna just drag column chart to the canvas. Now notice that the column chart is your typical kind of a chart. Most of other charts share the same settings, so once we review the settings for the column chart, all other charts would be quite familiar as well. Okay, so let's connect the chart title. Let's start with connecting the chart title. The chart title is the text displayed on top right here. I'm gonna clear the subtitle and it will be removed from the chart. Now these are titles, so for category X axis and value Y axis we can set a label that will be displayed there. So for X axis, let me just select, for example, Apple. You can see it's displayed right here. And for the y-axis, I can display something like a month, and you can see it's displayed vertically like so right here. I'm going to clear both of them because we don't need them anymore. The secondary value y-axis can have a title as well, and we will come back to this concept a bit later. Now, with the data, you have two options to connect the data to be displayed on the chart. You have the by range, and you have the by series option. Now what the by range option does, it uses a range on the spreadsheet for both series labels and data. So what that does is you have two options, the data in rows and data in columns, and if I select the range with data with both the labels for the groups and the series, or vice versa, depending on which way I do want it to be displayed, I will get the values on the chart. So I will select this whole table, and then the chart itself, the object would understand that these are labels and these are series, or vice versa, that these are series and these are labels. So I'm going to click OK, and you can see data in rows is now selected. So you now can see that you have two series, apples and oranges, because the data is in rows. So it got the names of the series from these two cells. And the labels, it understood that these are the labels, the months. So they are used as the labels for the groups of two bars, two columns, for each of the series. If I change this to data in columns, notice that it would reverse this, and now the names, the labels are apples and oranges, and actually we now have 5 series for months. So these became the series labels and these became the labels. I will clear this for now, and let's go to the by series option. Now the by series option is much more flexible, and it's the better choice generally to use. By series mode, you basically create every series manually. So to add a series, I can use this plus button, and later to delete it I can use the minus button. If I have more than one series, I can change their order as they are displayed on the chart by using these arrows up and down. Okay, so with these series, every every series has a set of options like the name. So let's say I wanted 2 series, the apples and the oranges, with 5 columns. So the first series would be apples, and I would choose this as the name of the series because I want it to be displayed, and it will appear in the legend and on the mouse over values, which we will review later. Now the values for this series would be these, and category labels are the basically labels displayed. So we have 5 columns here, and you can see that we have the months. So for every number there's a corresponding month. I want to be displayed on the x-axis. So I'm going to select these 5 cells for the category labels, and notice that the category labels are not dependent on the series. So if I create the second series, you can see that category labels stays here. So category labels are common for all the series within the chart object. So for the second series I would choose oranges, and for the values I would choose these cells. And now you can see we've recreated the same look of the chart as we had in by range when we had the data in rows. To change this to look similarly to data in columns, to have 5 series, I would create 5 series. For series names I would use these cells, and then for the category labels I would use these. The interesting option for the series, and this is series specific, is a plot series on primary or secondary axis. You can individually set it for every series, and you can choose the series to be plotted against another alternative y-axis. In this case it's y-axis. So for oranges, if I change it to secondary axis, notice that the second y-axis appeared and its range is different, and you can see that it does not match the grid lines for the primary y-axis. And also you can see when I switch the oranges back to the primary axis that it, relatively to the blue columns, the yellow columns are much bigger. That is done to display values of different magnitude within the same chart. Let's say if the oranges numbers were thousands and the apple numbers were still single digits, the chart would not be really viewable because of the huge difference in between the size of the columns. But if we move oranges to the secondary axis, that enables us to view both of them simultaneously and to compare the trends and dynamics on apples and oranges within one chart. You cannot compare them directly, these two numbers, but knowing the difference between the scale, knowing the difference between the range of the axis, you can still do some analysis using this chart, and which we would otherwise not be able to do this well. Okay, I'm gonna turn it back to the primary axis like so. And category labels we have already talked about. These are the labels for the categories or for the items in the series which we have tied to these, in this case, months. The next tab is insertion. Now this exists for the drill down functionality for the chart to insert control values into the spreadsheet to act as a control object. We will have a separate video covering this, and link to which you would see in the description below. So let's go ahead to the third tab, which is behavior. Okay, so the first option here under the common tab is ignore blank cells. And we have two options here, two checkboxes, the in series and in values. And what that does, it ignores the blank cells in the data set, so that when there's nothing in those cells, it would not reserve the space for those series or values. So let's say we would say ignore blank cells and values, and now you can see it says ignore cells at the end of the range only. So if I remove these two numbers for October, I would remove these two numbers, it would immediately totally remove the October, even though the label for it is still there. If I now uncheck this in values, you would see October reappear, but nothing is displayed for it. Similarly, if I had more series, and importantly, if I had dynamic amount of series or labels, These would be very useful because if there was no data for the whole series, like so, the series would not be displayed, the space would not be reserved right here, and it would not be displayed on the legend, not to show additional things which are not required to show. If I uncheck this, you would see oranges displayed in the legend, and also you can see space reserved right here to the right of the blue bars, even though there's no data. So this is useful to make the display of the chart dynamic and to display different amount of series or labels without wasting space. The next function is enable runtime tools. The runtime tools are used for scaling the active axis of the chart. In this case, the active axis for the column chart is y-axis because it can grow or shrink. The axis range can grow or shrink depending on the data displayed on the chart. So let's enable them. We have three options here to show for the focus button, show reset scale button, and show scale behavior options. Let's preview the dashboard and see how it works. You can see this little button appeared to the left top of the chart, and this is the button to call the runtime tools while the dashboard is running. So let's preview the dashboard. And now let's see how it works. So I hover over it, you can immediately see the menu appear, and you have three options to the left here. You have the enable scale growth. So when this option is selected, the scale automatically expands when the data increases, but doesn't shrink when the values decrease back. So if these values were to change dynamically, the range would grow to accommodate the data, but once the data would fall back, become smaller, the values would become slower, thus the columns would become shorter, the range would not change back. If you turn it off, then basically scaling would be disabled and runtime tools would not work. When you select this, the axis wouldn't change even if the data changes, but it would still change to accommodate the data, so the data would not go off the scale. And you have the full automatic mode. This mode is similar and identical to the automatic scaling in the settings of the chart, but you can choose this to get back to that automatic scaling. Also, you can focus on the chart data, so when the scaling is off, this is one-time automatic scaling. Click it once and it scales automatically, and then if the data changes and the scaling is off, you would have to click this every time the data changes to refocus. And you have the reset chart scale, so this returns the scaling back to the original scaling that was set for this object when the dashboard was launched. Okay, the next setting is, I'm going to disable these for now. We have the range slider. Now the range slider is a very interesting function. It can focus the values displayed on the chart. In this case, the values, not the series. The series remain the same. It's the amount of series that is static, but the amount of labels, in this case we have 5, can change. So I'm going to change these to 2 and let's say 4 with the range value judged by the position, and I'm going to choose the labels for the range from these. It's from 1 to 5. So now if I preview the dashboard, you can see that in this range slider the bars actually correspond to the appropriate bars on the chart, so it does display in a much shorter way, but still displays the correlation in between different columns on the column chart. But this can be used to isolate specific group of columns, like let's say we wanted just 2 first month, the June and July, or we wanted the last 2 months. So we just do this and the chart would just contain these, and then it would change the scaling and everything to display just these two. This can be very useful to isolate the data, specifically the data we want to see, without viewing the whole chart. And this can be very useful if the chart is big. So if we had 50 pairs of columns, 50 values, that would be much more crowded and much harder to understand. But you could isolate, let's say, years of, if we had like 60 months displayed, we could isolate 1 or 2 years at a time to judge dynamics specifically there. Okay, The next setting is sorting. The sorting basically sorts the columns, sorts the values on the chart, either ascending or descending, and you can choose which series does it use. Since it cannot sort on multiple series at the same time, you can just sort by one of the series at a time. So in this case, I'm gonna, it is already sorted by apples ascending, so you can see that the blue columns are now sorted ascending, and I can change that to descending, so they will be sorted like so. And notice that the oranges, the values for the oranges stay in the proper group, obviously in the proper label. If I change this to oranges, now it would get sorted by oranges, either descending or ascending. And the last sorting option is by category label. So these are our category labels, our months. So now they are sorted alphabetically. You can see right now, and we can reverse that to be counter-alphabetical, like by checking this. Okay, we will disable sorting. We want the months to be in order. The last setting here is dynamic visibility. The dynamic visibility is the very important function which controls the visibility of the object while the dashboard is running. So it has two fields. It has the status field and the key field. And the status field is taken from the dashboard, from the spreadsheet. And when the value in that field matches the key value in this key field, let's say the key field was 1, then when the status cell obtains the value 1, when it has the value 1, the object would be displayed. Otherwise, in all other cases, the object will not be displayed, thus suppressed from the canvas and not visible. Okay, the next tab here is scale. Now the next setting is scale. You have the options of manual, y-axis, scale, or automatic. Now again, in this chart the x-axis cannot grow unless you change the series. The y-axis can grow and can be changed. This range can be changed in order to accommodate all the values that it has to display. So here you have automatic y-axis which basically just controls automatically, and it has an option to allow zoom out only where the range would only increase and not decrease back while the dashboard is running. So if I check this, it would zoom out if the values increase during the dashboard running, but it would not zoom back in. And you can control how pronounced this effect is using this slider right here. But what you also have is you have manual access. Now with the manual access you can literally enter the minimum and the maximum displayed on the axis, as well as connect them to the cells on the spreadsheet. So I'm going to connect the minimum to this cell and the maximum to this cell, and now you can see it that the y-axis goes from 0 to 12, so its range is defined manually. You can also choose either the scale is linear or logarithmic. Currently, if I switch back to automatic, you can see it's linear, so the gaps are 2 digits each, 2 values apart, basically just 2 apart. If I change this to logarithmic, you would see that it changed to logarithmic, and the values displayed as columns are adjusted to that as well. A logarithmic scale is a scale of measurement that displays the value of a physical quantity using intervals corresponding to orders of magnitude rather than a standard linear scale. So there we go. The last thing here is fixed label size, where you can fix the horizontal size of the label. So if it wants to grow, if it's a numeric label, if it wants to become bigger, then the abbreviations are used. So if you have thousands, it wouldn't go to 1,000, it would display just, if it was 12,000, it would just display 12K. If it was 12 million, it would display 12M. And therefore, the size of the label is fixed, and it does not affect the widths of the chart area, of the plot area, or of the canvas of the chart, so to speak. The last setting here is divisions, which is available when you set the scale manually, and you can choose the number of divisions, or you can choose the size of divisions. Now there are also minor divisions available. For them to be displayed, I have to first check them, turn them on. So let's actually turn them on. They're currently turned on, but they are white. So let's change them to a lighter gray color. It has to be lighter than the major grid lines, like so. Now if I I will go to number of divisions. So here we have 3 gaps, from 0 to 4, from 4 to 8, and from 8 to 12. So 3 divisions. And we also have two minor divisions for every major division. So you can see every division has 2 gray lines inside of it, and I can change this to be whatever amount I want. In this case, 3 would make sense, because if I go from 0 to 1, 2, 3, 4, then these minor divisions would be per digit, per every value, per every digit on the scale. So I can now see that this is 2, and it's precisely 2 because it falls. It literally matches the minor division right here. You can also have the size of divisions option, where you can select how big is the division. So if I choose 4, you would see that the widths of the division, the size of it is 4, and I have the same 3 divisions. If I change it to 2, I would have 6 divisions. And notice that the minor division stays 3, and in this case minor division became twice smaller, so I can change it back to 1 for it to become the same kind of the scale again. Also notice that number of divisions as well as the size of divisions can be connected to the spreadsheet, and together with the manual y-axis limits, it can be very interesting to set the settings, the logic for the chart to be displayed in the spreadsheet using logic, and then connect it to the spreadsheet. So to control the way it is displayed by the formulas rather than just automatically let Xcelsius control that automatically. The next step is animation and effects. What this has is this has enabled data animation. So when something changes, does the display on the chart change immediately, or does it animate the switch or the movement from one position, from one state to the other? And we also have the entry effect. This effect is displayed when the dashboard is launched or when the object gets visible because of the change of the dynamic visibility settings. So let's preview that. I'm going to choose fade in, and I'm going to choose for 4 seconds. And if I preview the dashboard, you can see it slowly fades in for 4 seconds until it becomes totally opaque, so it stops being transparent. And the next step is appearance. This is where you set up the graphic, the visual setup of the chart. So it has 5 tabs to it. The first one is layout. The first setting here is show chart background. This controls either the background of the chart is displayed. Currently the background is white, but if I turn this off, the chart will become transparent, and anything underneath or behind that chart would be visible through it. The only things that would still be on top would be the chart's grids, the axis labels, the columns, the legend, and the name, but the background itself, the fill of the background, would disappear. Also you have margins. Margins define how far from the edges of the object does the data and the chart itself reside. So if I change this to 20, you would see that the object is further away from the borders of the chart. So everything inside the chart is further away from the borders. I can also control these individually. Currently it's set to same margins on all sides. So this checkbox defines controls them to be the same. If I uncheck this, I, for example, can change just the left margin like so, and all others just stay to 30. Let's set them all back to 10. The next thing is where you can control the color for different areas. You have the plot area, and the plot area is the area of the chart itself where it graphically is displayed, so the canvas of the chart, so to speak. And you can also show the border and choose the color for that to display them. And just choose some wild colors. You can see this red color right here. I'm gonna uncheck these, and you can control the border's thickness if you want it, like so. You have the title area. This is the area where the title of the chart is, so this area right here. And again, you can show the fill, show the border, and control the thickness of that border. Last thing here is enable legend. This controls the legend to be or not to be displayed. You can choose the position of it, so you can place it on top like so, or to the right, to whichever place you want it to be. You have the offset, so you can move it off center if you want it, in both vertically and if I place it on top, you can move it horizontally if you want it. You can fill the legend area pretty much the same way as we fill all other pieces of the chart. You can show border, and the last function, which is not present on others, which is actually interesting, is enable hide or show chart series at runtime. What this does, it displays either a checkbox next to the legend items, one per item, or you can just click on one of the legend items and it would hide the series, the corresponding columns from the chart. That can be very useful to isolate data, not to show the data you don't want to view. So if I uncheck this apples, they would stop being displayed on the chart. If I uncheck oranges, they would stop being displayed. I can just clear the chart if I wanted, or I can turn on both of them back so all of them are viewable. Let's turn off the entry effect so it doesn't bother us. The next tab is series. It's where you can choose the color for the series. So let's actually maybe change the color of apples into some more appleish color, and color of oranges into orange. So now they're more fruity. You have the marker size. This basically controls the widths of the column in this case for this chart. And you have the transparency, which basically just controls the transparency of the columns on the chart, which can be useful if something is displayed on the background or to just make it look, more attractive graphically. The next tab is axes, and that's where you control the axis graphically of the chart graphically. I can disable the axes. I can choose the color of the line which forms the axis, so I can change this to red, for example. I'm just going to change it back to that dark blue color. I can show ticks. The ticks are small horizontal lines, very short, to the left, which help to visually see the corresponding number to the line. So they are just, again, they're graphic. They don't serve any other purpose than display, and you can also control the thickness of them with changing the thickness of the grid line of the axis line. You can also change the thickness of these ticks. You have the horizontal axis. Again, you can control the thickness of the line that forms it and the color. And you have the grid lines. You have the major grid lines, the ones that appear as we've seen on the behavior tab. They're called major grid lines, and you have minor grid lines. Currently they are very slightly gray, and you can also change the thickness of these if you want it, like so. The next tab is text. It's where you control all the text, all kinds of text that get displayed on the chart are controlled right here. And you have the chart title and subtitle. You can just uncheck it for it not to be displayed and for the chart to take more space, or you can turn it on and leave it on if you want it to be displayed. Now for all kinds of text here, you have all these settings. You have the font, so you can choose a different font. You can choose a different font size if you want it, change the style, change the alignment and the color. And you have the number format, where you can choose a different format of display if you had numbers or currency, for example. For the values, you can also control, for some of the objects, you can also control the position. So here you can also set up the position of the legend, for example, same way as in the layout. Yeah, in the layout menu right here. You can control the same x-axis offset of it if you really want it. Also, you can notice mouse over values. The mouse over values are the values that are displayed when you hover over any particular column. And those values, the display of those, you cannot change beside for the settings of how it looks and its number formatting, for example. So let's actually turn off for this chart everything. We're not going to use the title. We're not going to use these titles because we don't even have them. We'll not use legend. We will use mouse over values. So we'll leave the mouse over values, and we'll leave the labels for horizontal and vertical axes. The last tab here is color. Now this controls the colors of everything basically on the chart, except for like series, but you can still control them on both here and here. So many of these duplicate the settings on other tabs. So you have the color for the series, you have the color for the background of the whole chart, so for the whole object, like so. You have the color of the title area. It's currently disabled because I have disabled the title, but we've seen that before. The plot area and the legend area, again, same settings as we've seen before, they are just duplicated. And the colors for the X's and grid lines, and same things. These are the duplications, we've seen these before. Now, the last tab in the settings of the chart is alerts. And alerts are used to color code the particular values, the particular value displays in order to convey some message. If, let's say something was bad, and we used color red as the indicator of bad, then some display, some column could have became red if we wanted it to become, if something was wrong. We cover alerts in much bigger detail and explain them in another video we have. The link to that video will be in the description below. Okay, so let's actually start the development of the dashboard. Okay, so I'm going to remove this chart, right, from like so, and I'm going to add a new column chart right here. Now, I'm going to immediately go to its settings. I'm going to change it to by series. I'm going to create 7 series for it because we will need 7 different series we'll use this data for them. And for series, for the name, I'm going to use this cell right here, like so. And for the values, I'm going to use just, in this case, a single value in this very cell. All of them will be on primary axis, so I'm just going to quickly connect all other 6 series to the appropriate data. Now notice that the 4th column in this table doesn't have a value. That one will be used just as a separator, so it will not have any values, but it would still have the name in order for it to be displayed on the chart. So I'm going to finish connecting these like so. Notice that as I change the names, the series names also get updated in this list, so it's convenient not to get confused. Okay, there we go. That is done. The next thing I'm going to do is going to go to appearance, and I'm going to disable the chart background. I'm going to disable the legend because I don't want it to be displayed. I'm going to stretch the chart like so. Now let's go to the text, and I'm going to disable the chart title. I'm going to disable the axis titles because they're not displayed. And we will also not use the horizontal axis labels, so I'm going to uncheck these as well, like so. Okay, we're ready. Now we'll change the number format for the vertical axis labels. We're going to change it to currency, like so. I'm going to check the suffix for it and enter the letter K so it indicates thousands. I'm going to change the amount of decimal places to 0, like so. So now you can see they are displayed like this. And I'm going to do the same settings for the mouse over values, since they should be formatted the same. So I'm going to do currency, add the suffix K, and change the amount of decimal places to 0. Also, let's go to series and change the marker size to something bigger, numbers so the markers are bigger, like so. This looks good. Now let's add a checkbox to control the visibility. It's right here in the selectors, and there we go. I'm going to drag it to the canvas. I'm going to just stretch it out a bit like so. I'm going to connect its title to here. So this one is going to control P1 sales, this blue bar. I'm going to set its source data to these two cells. Now for the checkbox in Xcelsius, you have two cells to be used as the source. So the source is always two cells. The first cell is the value that it would insert if it's unchecked, and the second cell is the value that it would insert if the checkbox is checked. So in this case it's a 0 and 1, so the checkbox would insert 0 into its destination cell when it's unchecked, and 1 if it is checked. So I'm going to select these two cells as source data. I'm going to select this cell as the destination next to the P1 sales, and you can see we have 6 of these cells right here, and you will see later in the video why do we need 6, because we would insert values from all 6 checkboxes right here and use them in the logic further in the spreadsheet. Notice that these cells are yellow and these cells are green. The yellow cells are used to receive data from the canvas object. So canvas objects insert data into the spreadsheet only into the yellow cells. Contrary to that, the green cells are feeding some object on the canvas with data. So if the object is reading some data from the canvas, if the object is reading some data from the spreadsheet, the cells used should be colored green. Now that is not technically necessary, but we use that as a color code to aid the readability of the dashboard, to aid the understanding of the data flow within the spreadsheet. So we have connected the destination to this cell right here. I'm just going to enter a default value of 1 here, just type it. Now let's go to the behavior settings of the checkbox, and I'm going to set it to default being checked, and also we need to change its color because it's going to serve as the legend as well for us to understand that it corresponds to this column. On the column chart we need its color to match. So what we'll do is I would go to appearance color and change the checked color to the exact same blue as we have used right here. So there we go. Now you can see that this color matches. Now what we have to do now is to make this checkbox actually control the visibility of this bar. And the way to do that is, since we insert 0 and a 1, if we multiply the value that constitutes this column, that forms this column, that this column displays, by 0, it would disappear. So when the checkbox is unchecked, it inserts 0 right into this cell. So if we take the value that this column uses, in this case this is this exact cell, and multiply it by the insertion field, by the insertion cell of the checkbox, we would get nothing if the checkbox is unchecked because it's going to be 0, and we will get the exactly same number if the checkbox is checked because it inserts 1 in that case. So to implement that, I'm going to insert a formula right here, and I'm going to take this hard-coded value and multiply it by the value inserted by the checkbox into this yellow cell right here. And so now, if I preview the dashboard, you can see if I uncheck this checkbox, the column disappears, and if I check it back, the column appears, because when I uncheck it, it inserts a 0, and the value that constitutes that column gets multiplied by 0, so it disappears. When I check it, it inserts 1, and the value gets multiplied by 1, so it stays the same value and is displayed on the chart. Now let's go back to the to where we started, to the original dashboard. You can see the same concept done here. So this is our blue P1 sales checkbox, but that is was just repeated 6 times, and now you can see that this serves as a legend for the chart. So there's no other legend than these buttons, and you can clearly see what is what on this chart, and you can also control the visibility. And this can be very useful. For example, if I didn't want to see the sales on this chart for any reason, let's say for analytic reasons, not to distract me, I can just uncheck them. And now only the costs and margins are displayed on the chart if I wanted to do so. You can see other objects used in this dashboard to make it complete, but this is a main concept within this one. Remember that you can download files as well as step-by-step instructions for this dashboard at our website. The link is in the description below. I hope this helps. Subscribe to our channel to get more tutorials like this one. Thank you for watching and good luck.
Here at Information Analytics Institute, we provide remote and on-site Crystal Dashboard Xcelsius training for people who want to start building interactive dashboards or seek to get better at it. The dashboards that are built during the training course cover numerous useful Xcelsius components, methods, and dashboard building techniques to get you started building dashboards in no time. We provide training for database and Lawson connectivity where you can learn to connect dashboards to various data sources. We also provide audit and completion services where we audit your existing dashboards for compliance with dashboarding best practices or complete any dashboard that you have remaining unfinished. For more information or to contact us, visit our website at www.informationanalyticsinstitute.com.